Unique Toys is like the gold standard for the Transformers live action figures, and with each release they have done bigger and way more ambitious things. And after the last figure, the Megatron from Dark of the Moon, what will they do now? Oh, really? Well, maybe for next time they'll make something bigger. Today we will talk about Unique Toys Red Dasher, their interpretation of Dino how we saw him in Transformers Dark of the Moon. A figure that came out of nowhere but that surprised all of us, so let's see how good he is. I wanna give a big thank you to Checa for getting me this pre-production copy for free. Help me thank them by buying this figure from the link in the description and using my code GABUTFR to support the channel. And now, let's begin. We'll start by talking about its alt mode because that's how it came out of the box. Speaking of how it comes out of the box, if you want to know why earlier I showed a box that had nothing to do with this guy, let me show you a small clip of when Checa decided to prank me live. Ah! What's this? I didn't order this. I think it's the Unique Toys Dino in another box. Here you can see Unique Toys R06, alright. Thanks a lot, Checa. And inside came this beautiful Ferrari Italia 458. And take a look at this beauty. All of the red plastic has a very nice shine to it, with translucent plastic on almost all the windows and translucent plastic on both the headlights and the taillight. Which, by the way, before I forget, one of the taillights came off once mid-transformation. Just look out for that. And we have silver paint on both the front of the car and on the rims of the wheels, although it looks like they forgot to paint the rearview mirror silver as well. And we have some black painted details here and there. The doors can be opened, although that is more for the transformation. And yeah, a very nice car mode. The advantage of stealing intellectual property. On top of that, the wheels are made of rubber and they spin quite well, plus the brakes are correctly placed, unlike Soundwave, and they allow the figure to roll very well. But what is going on? Yeah, my copy has a big problem, which I hope is just because it's a pre-production copy, and it's that for some reason the rear wheel pins don't stay in place for some reason. Literally their only job, which is to keep the wheel in place, they are not doing it. I tried putting a drop of super glue in the hole to hold the pin in place, and that seemed to do the trick. But I truly hope this isn't an issue once the final version of the figure comes out, but if it does happen to you, it's easy to fix. And to conclude, now let's do a quick size comparison to see how he fits in your collection. Here he is with SH Figure Arts Iron Man, Toy World Optimus Prime, and finally with a couple of carbots, the DX9 Hot Rod, New Age Soundwave, with Unique Toys Lockdown, they look great together, and finally with Black Mamba Sideswipe, and with Masterpiece Movie Bumblebee. And I do think that Dino does look slightly larger than he should be, which is something we'll talk about more in his robot mode. And finally, here he is with the Black Mamba Dance of Death. And this is the size that I believe would be the correct one for this figure. But even so, the Unique Toys figure does not stand out in a negative way in your collection due to its size, so it's not a big problem. But yeah, in conclusion, there we have the Unique Toys Dino in its vehicle mode. And I must say that it is beautiful. For what we've seen so far, I do think that the figure is worth it. But now let's go to his very enjoyable transformation to talk about that beautiful robot mode. And here we have Unique Toys Dino in his robot mode. And just look how gorgeous he is. It had been a while since Unique Toys didn't engineer a carbot, and that makes this figure feel so refreshing. This figure almost perfectly recreates the Dino character from Dark of the Moon. It does have a couple of things that might bother some people, but overall I think it's very impressive to look at. The red molded plastic translates very well to this mode, and a good amount of mechanical detail is revealed in some areas. A special mention goes to the back back because look how detailed it is, even when it's as flat as the rest of the body. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, but did you realize that this is where the front of the car ends up in robot mode? But it meshes so well with the rest of the mechanical detail that it took me a while to realize when the figure was first revealed. And even though these pieces do poke out from the front, that's how the CGI design is. And it's that ingenuity that has always characterized unique toys, and we love them for it. Another thing that I like is that they gave priority to the doors on this mode. What I mean is that you can see that the real shape of the door is merely sculpted in the vehicle mode, but actually the piece is cut here. That makes the doors in robot mode look much more dynamic and similar to the CGI design. Although personally I am getting tired of them putting doors on the backs of every design. Can we leave this trend only for when it makes sense, please? Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the paint job in this guy is simple, but it works. On top of that, these kind of carbots don't tend to have extremely weathered paint jobs, so this guy fits right in with the rest of your collection. Plus, we do have some gunmetal grey, silver, and even golden painted details. Really, the only part where I've seen some people say that it could have a better paint job is in the hands, since Dino had those very characteristic black hands with gold fingers that look very good. And also, I think that some paint in this general area of the collarbones could have helped too. Speaking of the collarbones, it's another thing that many people have been bothered by, since it's one of the most characteristic aspects of the Dino design, and here they leave a bit to be desired, although personally it's not something that bothers me that much. I like that they painted these sections to have more continuity, and really the only part where I think it could look better is at the top of the collarbones. If they had sculpted it more similar to the CGI design, it would have helped a lot. And by the way, since we're here, all this section of the arm reminds me a lot of the MetaGate figures. What the hell is going on here? And look at that beautiful face. I really like it, although I think they could have added a little bit more black paint instead of making it all grey, but still it looks good. And I like the way they did the eyes, with a metallic blue and a white spot in the middle to simulate the glow. And even though it can be a little hard to see, it still fills the figure with light. And the final thing that many may dislike is that the chest is made with faux parts. You know that doesn't really bother me. I have said plenty of times in the past that VFX artists literally change the pieces mid-transformation for others, so achieving them in a figure without fake parts would be very difficult, if not straight impossible. So having faux parts here doesn't really bother me, especially since we know the alternative. I know that this will be a detractor for many people, but in that case I guess this beautiful figure, identical to the CGI design, is not for you. But there's always a Dance of Death alternative, though I must admit that the pieces that surround the chest do poke out a little bit in my opinion. There's not much to do about them, the shape of the alt mode is literally underneath them, so I don't think they could be changed, but they don't look too bad. That also happens in some other areas of the robot mode, where small details have to be sacrificed, but it's not a big deal, and the reason is understandable. Like I've seen some people mention that the hips on this figure are a little bit thicker than they should be, and yeah, they're right. I can see it there. When I saw that, I was reminded of the Kirby figure of MetaGate Shatter, and now I can't stop seeing it, and neither can you. It's not a big deal, but yeah, I think it's something that could be improved. And another thing people noticed is that the crotch of this figure kinda looks like the battle mask from Bumblebee or Cliff Jumper. I mean, that's how the CGI design is, but maybe they could have painted these lower pieces and then it wouldn't look so similar. And just like those, there are a couple of details that I don't love, such as the legs on the side have this section that looks very simple in my opinion, where I think they could have put a little more mechanical details to kinda hide it or something. It doesn't get in the way of the panel bending for alt mode. Also, something that bothers my OCD a lot is that the joints for the feet don't line up with these holes here. It's definitely not a problem with the figure, but something in my brain would just like it to be perfectly centered. Another thing that I don't love about the feet is that on the soles we have the tires. I know it's a common way to hide those parts of the alt mode in the robot mode, it's just that when I see them in dynamic poses, it kinda breaks the illusion for me. Although I admit that's more of a me problem. I doubt many people care, but what I actually dislike about this feet is that the tire is where the figure stands. Most of the surrounding fingers don't really do anything to support the weight, and that makes the figure itself wobble with relative ease. I'd also suggest tightening the front toes with a drop of superglue. And the final thing that I don't love are these pieces here. I wish they could hide a little bit better. Here he looks like he has belly fat, like me. But yeah, those 4 last things that I mentioned are definitely nitpicky complaints, a small 5% that could be improved, but that doesn't affect the other 95% that looks pretty much perfect. And before we conclude, I just wanna talk about that transformation, and I love it. It's a typical unique twist transformation where all the pieces of the car are turned inside out, being incredibly smooth and enjoyable, and resulting in an almost perfect robot mode. The only thing that I wanna mention is that at first I had a hard time connecting this panel panels to the leg, but that's because that is not the correct order. First you wanna get the panel into its place and then you wanna tug in the wheel. It's easier that way. And overall this figure looks almost perfect. It has a couple of details that I don't love and a very controversial decision that immediately will make a lot of people pass on this figure, but all in all I feel that it is an improvement in every aspect when we compare it to the previous versions of the KO of Dance of Death. And now let's talk about this guy's accessories, where honestly there are not too many, but they're all we need. We have his two very iconic daggers, they connect to the forearms with a tab and a slot method, and I think they look very good. But as in my previous review, I would like that these could have some range of articulation. I believe that alien attack does win in that regard, or also that they were connected in a round port so that you could rotate as happens in his introductory scene. Anyway, they look good, they have well sculpted and painted detail, and they resemble what was seen on screen. His next accessories are his hooks that he used for like 5 seconds during the movie, but they are appreciated. These plug into the same port as the daggers and they have this flexible wire that you can bend to your liking. And that's it! Here at the tip they don't have articulation like the ones from Alien Attack did, but they are better painted. Which by the way, how many of you realize that in that Devil Saber stop motion that I released a couple of months ago, the hooks that I used were both Alien Attacks and Black Mambas. I thought that since they were red they would match well, and the only thing that I did was put some extra chains on them to give them that devastator look. Anyway, just a little fun fact. But yeah, those are the accessories for this figure. I always find it funny that Dino didn't have a long range weapon because in the movie you can only see him standing or running back and forth, and suddenly he does attack a Decepticon with his dagger, but I think that's the only time where he does anything in the final battle. Anyways, you can put him in various very dynamic poses with these accessories, and that's also thanks to the very good articulation of this figure. But before that, let's quickly go and check on Bagheera. Guys, I don't think Bagheera is growing up anymore. Not enough to show her every week. What do you think? Anyways, onto the articulation. The head's on a swivel that can do 360 degrees. It's also on a double hinge joint that allows him to do this, but that's more for transformation. He can look about up this far and down this far. The doors are on multiple hinge joints due to the transformation. They can move in and out on these ones at the base. They can rotate 360 degrees on these joints here, and they can also move in and out on these ones here. And also for some reason one of the promotional pictures shows that you can do this with the doors, if that's something that you want to do. As I mentioned before, all this section here really reminds me of MetaGate figures. We get a full rotation in this joint here. It can move out this far in this hinge joint here, and even further in this inner joint. And you even get this butterfly joint so that you can move the arm across the torso. Bicep rotation, double jointed elbows, rotation at the wrists, and sadly the hands are articulated in a very unique Toys way. All the fingers are together in this hinge at the base and this hinge in the middle, and the thumb is in a ball joint at the base connected to merely one hinge joint. We have a rotation at the waist, everything's good here, but unfortunately we don't have an up crunch, although we could fake one if we wanted to. For that we just have to unplug these side panels like this. And now let's untransform this section here. When you reach this point, you can plug the side panels in their place again, and these pieces stay more or less like this. This is not at all a valid point of articulation, this is more for display purposes, but if you have a pose where you need an up crunch, you can use this if you want to, although getting it back into place is a bit tedious. The legs can kick pretty far forwards, and also pretty far back. They have a decent split until these pieces here start colliding with the torso. Thigh rotation, a very satisfying double jointed knee, although as I said you may have to tighten this diecast joint here. And finally the foot can rotate 360 degrees on this joint here. It can bend pretty far up and down a decent amount. This back piece also hinges. Due to transformation, both the front and the back toes can move up and down, but sadly these front toes are kinda loose, so they might not help a lot with articulation, but you can also tighten them up a bit. And finally you get a crazy good pivot. I love the articulation on this guy. I think I could easily say that this is the best articulated figure from Unique Toys, and you can put him in a lot of very expressive poses. And almost every joint is incredibly solid. There are only 2 loose joints, and they are the diecast metal joints on the knees. I don't know if the diecast metal doesn't have a lot of friction in these parts, but in the end those joints could be tighter, so I guess I'll have to tighten them with a drop of super glue. There's also a screw in here that you could try to access, but as you can see you'll have to tear all the leg apart, so this is the quickest and easiest solution. But yeah, You could try that if you wanted to. Again, I hope that this is something that they will fix for the final release and that it's just a problem for my copy. And of course, those die-cast metal joints give this figure a lot of weight, making it feel very hefty. But yeah, the articulation in this guy is pretty good. But what some people may think is not as good is this guy's size, since I don't know why these third-party figures are coming out 1 centimeter taller than they should be. If you remember, that already happened with the MetaGate Haiku and it's happening again with this guy. But it doesn't bother me. Here's why. Here he is with Iron Man, my previous review the Yolopark Scourge, with M06 Ironhide, with KO Oversized Ratchet, with AAT Optimus Prime, he looks very good with his figures, with the original Venerable Sentinel Prime, with Zeus Toys Shockwave, here he is with Unique Toys Lockdown, with Unique Toys Optimus Prime, with Unique Toys Megatron, with Unique Toys Galvatron, and with Unique Toys Megatron. And the full Unique Toys family is here. And finally, here he is next to some other carbos such as Cyber Era Soundwave, with Black Mamba Sideswipe, with Masterpiece Movie Barricade, with DX9 La Hire, with MetaGate Haiku, and with Masterpiece Movie Bumblebee. And this is what I meant, since all these figures are now taller than Bumblebee, now he is who feels out of place. Besides, the character could really use a new mold, but I do understand the people who complain about this guy being taller. He should be smaller when we compare him to the rest of the Dark of the Moon team, but in my opinion, he still looks perfectly acceptable. And to wrap things up, here he is with the Alien Attack Virage and with the KO Oversized Dance of Death. And yeah, I do believe this guy is now obsolete. I will be leaving it in car mode, although it's not really necessary since this Unique Toys figure is so easy to transform, and he is definitely the figure that will be on my shelf from now on. He looks 1,000 times better, and I'm totally excited to see what Unique Toys cooks in the future. Hopefully it will be a big butt after having such a small figure. But yeah, as always I wanna give a huge shout out to showzstore.com for helping me get this pre-production sample. I hope it doesn't end up being very expensive in the end. But whatever the price is, I completely recommend that you pick this guy up. And don't forget to use my code GABOTFR in this box up here to support the channel. Links in the description. And now it's time to go to the last part of this review and give this guy his final grade. And honestly, I'm going to give him 5 stars. Assuming the price isn't excessive, but if it costs more than $110, it will go down to 4 stars. But I completely suggest that you get him. It's a very good figure in all aspects, and if you do it, I really don't think that you'll be disappointed. I could honestly say that this guy is the definitive version of Dino from Dark of the Moon, unless a KO releases that is slightly smaller. Thank you very much for watching this review, your support is highly appreciated, and I'll see you in the next review of a very anticipated figure.